show, a few technical headaches. Thankfully, not on my side today, but every day it's a team effort here. Somebody's got to chip in with a technical issue. I'm Chris Spags, welcoming back the smartest man in daily basketball analysis, Mr. Fast Eddie Fear. How you doing today, Eddie?
Anxious to get started. Sorry we're late, everybody. I had to reinstall 2 programs to get it to see Chris's beautiful face today. So
you got to earn this gold in front of you every time. And as always, we are presented by Thrive Fantasy. I'll hit this real fast. Thrive Fantasy is an app who is sponsoring this show. They are a great partner of ours. Thrive Fantasy is a new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes. You pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth. So that's where the game theory lies. I'm going to drop a link into the YouTube chat right now, but if you go there, you can download the app and get $10 on any $10 deposit, $20 on a deposit of $100, and $50 on a deposit of $200 or more. And that is a fast release deposit, no waiting around. You get right in there, you get to spend that money. So go download Thrive now, click the link in the chat, and we'll do that. And let's talk about a Thrive prop up front, which is relevant because we have some news in this game right now. We got Bradley Beal getting 0.5 points versus Kyrie Irving. Eddie, who would you go with in that prop bet battle?
Again, I had to reboot absolutely everything to get you. Did we get news after Porter out?
No, just Porter out. John Wall's in.
Yep.
That is about it so far. And Baines is starting on a minutes limit.
Sure. Raw points. What was the question?
Bradley Beal getting +5 points versus Kyrie. Straight up raw points.
That's a good line. I will take Kyrie if I'm getting 5.
I would also take Kyrie there. I got Kyrie getting 23.9 today, Beal getting 21.4. And with Wall back in the lineup, I don't see any reason to try to push and get cute with Bradley Beal. It's probably not his night. So go ahead, download that Thrive app. The link is in the YouTube chat right now. They are a presenting sponsor of ours, and we appreciate them greatly. Eddie, we got a bunch of news. We got a bunch of decisions people have to make. Who are the core plays you're looking at right now for a lineup if somebody were to start building the second we start this show?
Yeah, there's it's obviously a day with a fairly massive slate that I'm not looking at anyone sort of as a must play. I'll go through and talk about some of the chalky guys a little bit here. I'm pulling all my various windows back up and executing some macros real quick to get back where we were again. That was some pretty frustrating shit there for a minute. All right, just top of my head, talk about some guys here. So I think the present love for Larry Nance makes a fair amount of sense. The biggest reason you would be worried about playing him, or the 2 reasons that we've been worried about playing him thus far this year, have been the absence of minutes, which, again, they basically did everything possible to pull those minutes away from him. That's going to be a lot harder for them now without Tristan Thompson for quite some time, although David Nwaba being back, even playing limited minutes, I assure you will take as many minutes off Nance as possible. And additionally, his lowered usage. The first, again, we can be reasonably assuaged about due to the fact that their options behind him are limited, and you don't even have 100% healthy Ante Zizic, and I don't think they want to throw out piles of Channing Frye, so I tentatively have him for 35 minutes this game, which feels good. And then his usage and just in general his fantasy production are a hell of a lot more impressive when he comes off the 5 instead of off the 4. He just gets rebounds and then ends up leading breaks. He just ends up being a much better fantasy player. So I think Larry Nance is fairly good chalk. I think it's he would in a vacuum be priced, you know, in the mid-7s. So he's just still well too cheap in his role. Not the safest thing in the world, but those things plus a combination of the matchup with New York is pretty exciting for me. Power forward is a pretty sticky spot. There's obviously a number of guys there we're looking at, especially on FanDuel, but not out of play on DK. In the same game. I do like taking a shot on Noah Vonleh. I think they want him in this game. He is still just very underpriced, certainly for the upside he carries with him. And again, it's a spot we're looking at where you have both the Morai twins, who are both now in pretty good spots as far as tournaments go. One of the most popular players in this spot is going to be Marcus Morris. With no Hayward again, no Horford again, limited minutes out of Baines, we're still going to get into the 30s minutes of Marcus Morris, possibly even more than we saw last time where there was some foul trouble and eventual blowout considerations. There's a real chance you get a ton of minutes for him. He's probably the cash option here, or him next to Nance. I like tournament pivots to his twin brother, Markieff, who, if he can escape the sort of foul trouble bugaboo that he's been dealing with for a while, certainly has an upside. And again, Vonleh, another guy in those, just even looking at the mid-priced power forwards. I think I like the entire New York-Cleveland game more than most other people do is I just think that obviously the New York side we have. I got a lot I want to say tonight. So again, I like Vonleh quite a bit in tournaments. Cantor is always going to make some sense in tournaments. Kevin Knox is it's going to be interesting to see how it goes with him getting into the starting lineup and how many minutes that portends for him. We've seen games where he randomly is getting 40 minutes off the bench, which is sort of ridiculous at that point. You barely see the bench. But it's going to be really interesting to see how many shots he jacks up in an environment where necessarily the team won't be that happy about it. The environment is great as far as shooting, but he's now out there next to Cantor and Hardaway for a lot of the game. There's been some odd game log watching today. People have talked to me about a couple players. One from this game is Tim Hardaway Jr. The last couple times he played the Cavs, he had, I want to say, 55 to 60 fantasy points in both games. And all that's really in common is this is still a shitty Cavs defense. Those are literally games from last year, I think, if memory serves. And there are literally 0 starters in common between those two games and this one on this Cleveland team, and 2 starters in common on this New York team. So not a whole lot has to do with a lot. He's still absolutely fine to play in a tournament, and it's another environment in which he can excel. But him versus Cleveland really isn't a thing. It's not the smog in the air is randomly making him, etc. Same thing with Bradley Beal. Someone hit me up with, last X Games, Bradley Beal against the Celtics. He had, I don't know what it was, 30, 40, 50, and 60 or something like that. I'm pretty sure the 50 and the 60 in those came in, I think they played the Celtics without Wall twice last year. And Beal was very good in both those games. With Wall in there now, it just becomes a bit of a mess. I certainly like, as we spoke about the day before yesterday at length, targeting guys against the Wizards. They do tend to be under-owned in certain situations. Combining that with guys being out for Boston, I do think that is fairly rationally a team to attack. I do like Kyrie a ton. That middle-range point guard spot between Kyrie and even Wall, in theory, if you thought he was 100% healthy. Kyrie versus Wall, head-to-head over time, again, my entire note system is down now, but has been a distinctly John Wall advantageous spot. He was repeatedly putting up, 25 and 15, so it was just flat outright scoring Kyrie. But again, I believe they've played once off the top of my head since Kyrie made his way to Boston. So John Wall, if you want to take a shot at 8,400 John Wall, if he's 100%, he should smash the shit out of that price. Porter being out doesn't hurt him whatsoever. So I'm a pretty big fan of that. Porter being out, does free up some usage. So now if you're playing certainly a lot of lineups, you can start cracking room for Satoransky, Austin Rivers, Jeff Green. Off the top of my head, with these guys out, I assume Sato is going to get the start. Especially with his price up, I don't like him that much. So between those guys, I would probably go Oubre, my favorite, again, of all of them. But then after that, into the scrubs, I'd actually probably go Green, Sato, Rivers, if I was to grab one of those guys in the tournament. And again, that's something to do with the ownership on a massive slate, and with him, being what he was the last few games, the Sato ownership back down into single digits makes a lot of sense. For the Nets and the 76ers, I like both D'Angelo Russell, especially on FanDuel, and Spencer Dinwiddie, also especially on FanDuel, actually, where I think he's priced dollar for dollar, the same as DK. They just make a ton of sense. You get D. Russ at a shooting guard position, which feels a little bit better. Point guard, there's some better options I looking at. But he's it was a big money spot for us when last they played, where both those guys went for, 65 and 40 something. And D-Russ has generally been good against the 76ers, which doesn't mean a lot for me with the differences in personnel, but they've also just been giving up production to that type of slashing point guard for most of the year. And so I don't see any reason that wouldn't start there. Especially with Dennis Smith out, it's hard not to like a lot of the Mavs. Again, priced much better on FanDuel, but if on FanDuel you don't have at least 2 Mavs in your lineup against the Hawks, you're probably doing something wrong. Harrison Barnes is probably going to be the favorite, based on the fact that his price for him is very good. He's shot horribly the last 4 games. Again, don't have anything up, but he's averaging like 20, 25 fantasy points. It's been bad, but he will remember how to shoot a basketball, and nothing breaks his slump like a matchup with the Hawks. And small forward is really bad. Like, at their prices, Harrison Barnes might be the only small forward I like, thinking off the top of my head. Kevin Knox is, I think, 49 on FanDuel. 4,900, that makes some sense in tournaments. Because, again, He has been taking, his minutes have been all over the place. You're getting Kevin Knox 17 minutes, 18 minutes, 25 minutes, 40 minutes. Like, he's all over the place. He basically takes a shot every 2 minutes. And a lot of that time has come next to these starters. Like, we're talking about, I'm just going to pull this one up because Kevin Knox, not my favorite guy, so I'm top of my heading stats I'm not overly familiar with. And naturally, it's not even visible there. But if he maintains his role, and I think he very might, he can just sort of blunt force trauma his way into a pretty successful fantasy line at 49 on FanDuel or even 45 on DK. And again, I like him on FanDuel just because, the position is really, really cramped. But if you go back and look at, I'll just go back over the last 4 or 5 games because, again, we'll go back over the last 5 games. This is a team that reinvents itself every 5 games anyway, so nothing else would be relevant. 37 minutes, 20 shots. 28 minutes, 11 shots. 25 minutes, 12 shots. 20 minutes, 6 shots. 41 minutes, 25 shots. He's lighting it up. And when you're playing as many minutes, when you look at that 37-minute game and that 41-minute game, you obviously are playing at least 70% of those minutes next to the starters and next to Tim Hardaway Jr. and next to Enes Kanter. So, Kevin Knox not a player who I think is particularly ready for prime time at this point, but super athletic. And if that kind of usage is going to stick around, that will lead into ridiculous fantasy games. And, for example, he just had a pretty monstrous one against Charlotte where he ended up with 26 and 15. So that not likely to come again, but his price is too cheap if he does anything like, what he very possibly could do with that amount of time thusly apportioned to him.
One thing I noticed too is that he does take usage away from Hardaway and Kanter. I know a lot of people are probably going to be concerned about Hardaway taking usage from him. I think Knox is unashamed enough where that's not as much of a concern for me.
Right, and I'm saying we have some evidence to look at that in the past, and maybe some of those 20-minute games, and I don't have the logs up in front of me. Most of those minutes did take place where he came off the bench and only shared 8 of those 20 minutes with Tim Hardaway Jr., we'll say, and I imagine that's the case. But when he plays 40 minutes, he has to play 32 of those with Tim Hardaway Jr. because Tim Hardaway Jr. doesn't sit that many minutes and clearly was unabashed taking 19 and 25 shots in some of those games. So there's just a point at which, I'm just way the hell too cheap. So again, FanDuel, he's sitting in there at that power forward position, which again is certainly a tough go of things. But on DK where he's 45, that's a number that certainly makes a lot of sense for me. Let's just talk about that mid-range a little bit here. So there's a lot of questions about the 76ers and the potential value on that team. Furkan Korkmaz is not good chalk, but he's not bad chalk, because while he does have a floor, which is bad, and while he is going to be more popular than he probably should be, which is bad, he is just objectively points per dollar now still a pretty solid play. In this spot, I would generally project him for the area of 24 to 25 fantasy points. He's going to get to play down more because Muscala is out as well. So that opens up a few more minutes for him. So that's a couple more rebounds, giving him a slightly safer floor. He probably takes 10, 12 shots in what I think is 26, 28 minutes. So I think he probably gets north of 20. I would much rather play him in cash than play him in tournaments. Yeah, so Satoransky is starting. That's what I expected. Jeff Green is starting at the 4. Jeff Green, sort of an interesting question now. On FanDuel, he's like 3,600, and he's, I believe, small forward, so that feels a little bit better. I'm going to double check that. Sorry, I'm still getting everything up and running again. Yeah, he's 3,600 at small forward, and starting at the power forward is actually something we like quite a bit. So I'm a fan of getting some Jeff Green into your life there if that price is out for you.
You mentioned Korkmaz. Can we talk about Korkmaz versus the other chalky cheap player with Jalen Brunson on the slate for DK? Which of those two would you prefer?
In tournaments, I would really rather not play either one. I think they're both fine. Brunson has shot over his head recently, but finds himself in a position where, yeah, I do think he plays 30 to 32 minutes against the Hawks, so I'm absolutely, I guess I don't mind playing Brunson. Korkmaz, there's just a number of other ways it goes along. Not that his matchup is necessarily that disadvantageous dealing with Brooklyn, but, he's a guy that can go away from. I'm not as secure in the minutes. Shamet can do what he can do. This is a team that has always thrown more minutes at TJ McConnell than he kind of deserved, in my opinion, but he just is always a guy they're like, oh, there's some spare minutes. Let's give him to TJ. You know, last game, both these guys, I think Furkan had 26 and TJ had 28. But again, you're now dealing with Furkan going to spend more of his time out there with the starters. So, you know, Simmons, you know, he's going to bounce out and get open for some threes. And, you know, hopefully Simmons gets them for those. But, you know, without Butler there, you'll get Embiid playing down more and maybe just dominating the shit out of the usage. So it's not hard for me to see how Furkan could, in theory, not work out. You know, Brunson's just pile of minutes against the Hawks. I think that oven by itself makes me a bigger fan. But when I say I would kind of rather not play either of them, I just mean that there's tons of value I really like. And again, just talking about sort of in that range, if you just go up a little more money, or in the same range, you can play TJ McConnell, who I just mentioned, who's $3,500 and probably plays into the high 20s in minutes again and brings with him some steals upside. He's more expensive on FanDuel, but as is Furkan, actually. Jeremy Grant at 4,100 against the Pellies is a really nice spot and is going to have not as much ownership. Tim Frazier in that same game at 4,100. Kyle Anderson is 4,200. So certainly if you need a guy in the threes, yeah, I like going down to those other guys dealing with Brunson or Korkmaz if he fits in your lineup. But I don't think either of them I'd be trying to get. They're not in the position where it's like Trey Lyles and it's like, I'm thinking about going 100%. They're that good. Like, they can really, there's a real chance they screw this up. Both those guys. They both project to easily pay off their price. They'll both probably be fine. Most of the numbers you're going to get 17 to 26, and it won't really matter either way. But there's a real chance they can screw that up. So I'm just more inclined in tournaments to try to find other guys who carry a similar upside and are going to be 8% owned as opposed to 28.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I like them both as plays, and I think they do have some upside. Brunson in particular with the Atlanta game, because I think he's got some steals upside. First, the team is going to turn it over, and Trae Young, I think, is going to try to show up a little bit too much, but can also always lead to turnovers as well. People are asking about this news item, which just came through Fantasy Labs Twitter, and I'll say the name because I'm unafraid, and they do a good job. Talking about Coach Alvin Gentry looking to turn the minutes back a little bit for taper them, actually, is the exact quote of Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis. Seems like a lot of cause for concern for some people out there. I feel like the word choice of taper seems like he's going to be pretty flexible with it if this game is getting close and they need the win. What do you think about that news?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. You could argue it's good news for Julius Randle, who apparently was not specifically named. And is going to be the most popular. I mean, is going to be, I think he's 35 to 40% owned or something. It's going to be hard to, you know, not view this as maybe a minor boon for him. But, you know, it is difficult with Mirotić out to figure out exactly what they're going to do there. I think Etuan is out as well. So Solomon Hill will get in there and they'll start playing him 29 minutes. And he's a very good defender and they'll want him out there to handle one of the guys on the Thunder tonight. But, you know, they'll slide a few extra minutes to Darius Miller. I don't, you know, exactly know what to say. I did not consider either Drew Holiday or Anthony Davis thrilling plays tonight. The Thunder defense has, you know, bounced between good and spectacular over the last few weeks. And there's a lot of guys I like on this slate. And so outside of Randall, who, again, points per dollar, great play, tournaments, I would kind of rather pivot to other guys I think carry a big upside. I was generally a little light on those guys anyway. So, yeah, if you, I mean, you had Drew was all the way down at 7,900. That objectively felt good. You know, Anthony Davis obviously always carries a massive upside with him, but this is not a good matchup for either of them. So, if you're looking for a reason to play someone else, go ahead. I can't, it's difficult. Let's see, that tweet, I have it up in front of me, came out at 620. So I think, you know, you're looking at ownership reduction on, what do we have ownership for those guys? I'm sure we had Drew higher between the two.
Let's see. For AD, we have him at 17% projected ownership right now.
Drew 22? And for Drew, sorry, I was guessing.
Yeah, hold on. I just lost it. Come on. He is one of the chalkier players on the slate at 24, so you were close.
Yeah, that's about right. I think those numbers do both come down. I think you're now going to get something like 20 and 14, respectively, for Drew and him. And, you know, yeah, I think I mean, there's just a lot of plays I really like tonight. So I'm going to, all right, my notes are reloading. That only took 7 minutes. So yeah, being as efficient as I can, I apologize if I dominate the time, but I just want to make sure I don't forget to mention anything. Pacers and Bucks just don't play anybody. Let me help you out there. If I had to play somebody, I'd play Chris Middleton on DraftKings, who generally is good against the Pacers. Matchup looks good on paper, has looked good on tape, and he's down to, I think, 6,200. So if I'm forced to play a player from that game, it's Chris Middleton on DK. But, yeah, that's about it. Really like Marcus Morris because I do think they're going to lean on him a little bit there. Jaylen Brown is out apparently, so Marcus Smart now makes a lot of sense as a play just because the minutes are going to come up. Still just tournaments for me. But the news came pretty late, so Rozier's too expensive to throw in as a punt now. I think he's close to 6 on both sites. Oubre's still under 5 on DK and is still going to be under on. But again, this is a tough matchup, so I think a lot of people are going to have an inclination to try to possibly find a way to get in Wizards, and I think you don't need to. It's fine if you do, but I don't think you need to make sure you have Wizards in your lineup. Hopefully I'm explaining that fairly well. Celtics are a legit bad matchup. Knicks and Cavs we talked about a bit. Again, Nwaba is back and is going to play limited minutes. I had some interest in Jaren Blossom game previous to that news. Is a very adequate rebounder, and otherwise, he was tolerable at a price at like 3.5. Oladipo getting the start, so yeah, just generally avoid that game. It was a little dicey to begin with, but a good defense and a very good defense, and nobody priced particularly advantageously. You can certainly play, there's lots of value. You can play Giannis in tournaments. Giannis can certainly give you a huge number here, but he's pretty consistently given you about 55 in this matchup, and we've seen it some number of times, so it's not a great spot for him. So if you think Giannis is 3% owned, sure, get 7% Giannis to get on top of that. Cavs game, again, Nwaba being in makes everything a little worse here. Sexton is more of a cash game play for me. He just doesn't get steals and blocks. And that really caps his ceiling to a degree. He's still too cheap at like 5,100, 5,300. And he has shown the willingness to sometimes take 24 shots and ignore everyone else. And not having Tristan there, maybe he just says F you to Nance and just does more calling number 1 at the point. So it's not like he's insane in a tournament, but I think he's giving you like 25 to 35 every night, and unlike a lot of 5K players, 50 seems outright impossible. Like I will say again here, the odds on Sexton getting 30 are greater than the odds of Nance getting 30, but the odds of Nance getting 50 are probably greater than the odds of Sexton getting 50, if that makes any sense. I like Andre Drummond a ton here. My two big centers on the evening are Andre Drummond and Karl Anthony Towns. Both have basically made the person against whom I expect them to spend the majority of their time on the court look egregiously stupid. I was watching tape for a lot earlier today. Towns has absolutely no difficulty handling, again, all my notes are down, but I will go with the generic statement of bludgeoned the piss out of Willie Cauley-Stein the last couple times they played, including with Butler there for both of them, and you were talking, I don't even remember, like 39 and 18 games. I like that spot a lot. I think you end up with, I'm going to guess we have about 20% Embiid and about 5% Towns. I would rather play Towns in my one lineup there. I have no issue with playing Joel Embiid, obviously, against Brooklyn, Suns, Butler. The ceiling there is absolutely massive. Ceiling's pretty massive for Towns, too. Games in Sacramento, which was what I would like to see between these two teams. So a fair amount of interest in Karl Anthony there. And then Drummond... someone again giving me bad back-to-back information today, which is the thing is that, or head-to-head rather than back-to-back, is that that information needs to be parsed carefully. Like someone hit me with, Drummond had 2 good games and 2 bad games against Cody Zeller out of the last 4 times they played, and I had to say, no, he didn't. He had 2 good games against Cody Zeller and 2 bad games against Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard didn't play in the 2 games that, again, don't have it in front of me, but Andre Drummond put up like 26 and 20 in those games. And in the games where Dwight was there, unsurprisingly, he struggled a little bit more. So I do think you can run Cody Zeller out there in cash. I wouldn't do it in tournaments. I do think, but I like Drummond quite a bit, especially on DK, at a still reduced price there. Of course, you can still play Blake. I like Kemba a hair less than Kyrie Irving at their same prices. Just a matchup consideration there and everything. I would probably rather play Kyrie. If we think there's a distinct ownership discount, I'm playing Kemba. Again, I haven't really gotten into that. Quicker take on the 76ers on the whole. So we've discussed that. I think Shamet is in play as a min-price punt on FanDuel. Otherwise, I would look away. He can do this thing where he plays 17 minutes and scores 3 fantasy points. But on FanDuel, certainly still in play for me. Muscala being out adds a little more love for Korkmaz, as we mentioned there. A couple more minutes come to TJ, and Wilson Chandler probably gets rounded up a little bit, and on DK where he's 3,800 against Brooklyn. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think he will be owned nearly as much as he should be, and I'd much rather have a share of Wilson Chandler than a share of Furkan Korkmaz, who, in a couple ways, he's a slightly better three-point shooter than Wilson Chandler, but Wilson Chandler generally a better fantasy commodity. Westbrook, I love a ton of what I expect to be a somewhat reduced ownership. It was one of my first guys in today. Has been really, really good against the Pelicans and against Drew Holiday, and I expect to continue to call his own number to some degree and eventually shoot better than 20% from the field. So, yeah, he, again, I no longer have notes, but if you went back earlier this year, he had the game where he had truncated minutes and played 25, 26 minutes. And then if you looked at his last, I'll say, 10 games against the Pelicans, I think you had 8 triple-doubles and an average fantasy point total of about, I'll say, 65 to 70. Like, there's literally like 1 or 2 games he didn't get 60, and 4 or 5 of them he got 69 to 78 or so. It's just a tremendous spot for Russell Westbrook. And I expect the ownership to be artificially reduced because of yesterday, or their last game, rather. Paul George.
Before you move on, since we're talking about Westbrook, we do have a Thrive prop
nice
bet, which is related to Westbrook, and actually this game in particular, because it's Anthony Davis and Westbrook. And we also are doing a free roll today, which I was made aware of during the show. So it's actually a simpler one on Thrive, where you just go on. You're only doing a handful of prop bets instead of the full range of them that they're usually requiring people to do. A little bit of feedback from the people who played our last tournament. So go check that out on Thrive now. I'm going to drop the link in the YouTube chat. But let's talk about this particular Thrive bet, which is on that slate. Anthony Davis getting 1.5 points and rebounds versus Russell Westbrook. Which guy do you think gets more, with Davis being spotted 1.5?
The news will be just enough for me to still go with Westbrook. Before, I would have had them almost identical if I remember what I had earlier in the day. I think I had them nearly dead tied, but now you're telling me I lose maybe 4 minutes of Anthony Davis? 2 minutes? So I'll take Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I think Westbrook too. I think, to me, the matchup with Davis and Adams too would be enough to take me off of them, where I think Adams at least takes enough off the table rebounding wise. Where maybe he makes it back with points, but I think that makes me a little uncomfortable with AD. But of course, Thrive is a partner of ours, so please support them. It's a new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes, no bottom-tier athletes on Thrive. You pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth. So that's where the game theory lies. They actually have "where in" this ad copy, which is a great word to throw at me and expect me to say. But go check Thrive out. We got a free roll going today, so you have some time to get in there. And again, if you are playing any sort of our projections, if you're a premium customer, you can go use Josh's projections and find the answers really fast. So go join up, click that link. Now keep plugging. Tell me more about your thoughts, Eddie, before we go hit the questions.
Okay. And feel free to interrupt me if I say something you strictly disagree with. Jump on in here. I'm just trying to be fast because we lost 10 minutes on the top. Mentioned Tim Frazier I like as a value play, and I don't even hate Tim Frazier as like a cash play. It looks like he's going to play 30 to 34 minutes every game, and he just is a very good assist guy. So in this spot with I think the fastest game on the slate, I would project him for like 9.5 assists, and that brings a pretty safe floor for a guy who's $4,100. So no issue with you getting some Tim Frazier up in your life. And again, Jeremy across the ball, not much to add there. You can obviously use Paul George as I'm filling a shitty small forward position if I'm on FanDuel, and he's still a little too cheap there, and getting some exposure to this game if you're not wanting to spend I think Russ is 11 and change over there. Trailblazers and Grizzlies. This may be a quick one. I mean, Aminu is still too cheap, and it's a matchup that doesn't bother me at all for him. He shoots where the Grizzlies don't guard very well, and he's been rebounding extremely well, and he's just too cheap on DK, 4,600. I don't want Nurkic or Gasol. I won't blame you for playing Gasol on FanDuel, where he's 7,400, which is just preposterously cheap. He was literally 10-2 2 weeks ago, so that came off quickly. Part of it was, him, but part of it is the matchup, and he's been legit bad against Nurkic. Nurkic does a fairly decent job against him, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. But FanDuel, I would think having some exposure there makes some sense. The price on Jaren Jackson Jr., I still like him quite a bit in tournaments. 3 steals and blocks will get you some sort of upside. See if I have anything else to add on the Hawks and the Mavs. I like Doncic quite a bit. I like Doncic in cash. I like Doncic in tournaments. Again, a lot of guys are price specific. Wesley Matthews, the real guy who on DK is way too cheap, and I bet we have him projected for like 20%. I bet he's got a number next to him. And Doncic. Yeah, Harry Doncic
is at 9%.
Yep. These two teams did play again earlier this year, and yeah, you got about what you expect. You got 30 to 40 of basically all the Mavs who played appreciable time in that game. Dennis Smith Jr. was in that game. Harrison Barnes was out, but you got like 32 from Dennis Smith Jr. and 34 from Wesley Matthews and 38 from DeAndre and 37 from Luka. It was like the first week of the season, but we already had a strong idea just how shitty this opposing team would be. You had a massive Bazemore game in that one if you're still chasing that and trying to make that work out for you, and they still have a lot of guys out. So you can always play Kent Bazemore in a tournament with all the other options today. He won't be that highly owned, so because A, it's a matchup that's good on paper, B, it's a matchup he's excelled in before, C, he won't be that highly owned, and D, get you some correlation with your Mavs plays. I certainly don't mind Bazemore in tournaments. I don't mind an underpriced Dwayne Dedmon, but not the greatest spot for him, so he's down my list of value plays a fair amount. The Heat and the Jazz, obviously kind of ugly. I don't think we can expect Justice Winslow to keep going absolutely nuts, and the matchup is obviously dreadful, and I don't think the ownership gets as low as I would like it to be. If you get a second, give me an ownership on Justice Winslow on DraftKings, where he's pretty advantageously priced.
Let's see. Justice is coming off of a couple of, 3 40-point games in a row. He is at 13%.
Yeah, that feels about right for me. I don't have an issue with you doing that, but the matchup is understandably bad. Traveling to Utah is a thing, et cetera, et cetera. From this game, I would probably rather run out Bam Adebayo and hope he can do filthy things, or a pretty discounted on DK $6,100 Josh Richardson. Utah isn't a good matchup for anyone. It hasn't been a good matchup for him, but when you take both Whiteside and Dragic out of there are suddenly real chances of him just doing a bit of everything for this game. So even on FanDuel, where, again, small forward is shit, and DK where he's $6,100, that's probably where I'd go. DraftKings, a lot of the Jazz players are priced down so much they make at least very decent tournament plays. I don't even mind Rudy Gobert in cash at $7,400. Hard to imagine he doesn't pay that off nicely, and that's certainly playable in tournaments. And then you have Rubio's 59 on DK and Donovan Mitchell down to 6.6. Those guys both make sense. I would probably want just one. Still not the world's best environment, but especially like Donovan Mitchell will be very low owned. Rubio should be pretty low owned. I didn't even mind Rubio and Gobert in cash in my rankings, just based on really advantageous prices. For the Timberwolves, my favorite guy would be Towns, as I mentioned before, is what I feel is a pretty nifty pivot off of Embiid. I do have Embiid pivot projected for 4 points higher, and I have no objective reason not to think Embiid is amazing, but I think you can make an argument we still have some concerns about fatigue. I think you can make an argument that he did look, out of sorts for several games in a row, and in the last game really didn't dominate the way we expected to, or seem that engaged in a situation where playing against Drummond, which is someone who he's enjoyed playing the head games and getting really in there with, so I think you can sort of weave a narrative if you're trying, but unless you're throwing bullshit like that up into the air, no reason to think that these teams won't be particularly good. It's worth pointing out the Mavs play tomorrow, by the way. I forgot to mention that before. Dallas plays tomorrow. They are, I believe, the only team on the front end of a back-to-back. So, with this being a potential blowout, if you're looking for a reason to be not so excited about playing Mavs players, it would be the fact that if they get up a nifty amount, certainly Carlisle has no issue running his bench very, very deep, and you could see that go... you could see some of those guys end up getting 25 minutes if they beat the shit out of the Hawks. Although, memory serves, that game earlier this year, I think the Hawks won. Pretty sure the Hawks beat them, if you want to look that one up for me. Not that one game is an incredibly relevant sample, but there it is. So for the Timberwolves, favorite guy would be Towns. Second favorite guy would be Rose. I think this actually works out fairly well for Derrick Rose. I would have some interest in him. And then for the Kings, like De'Aaron Fox, like Buddy Hield in tournaments. Don't mind Shumpert as another punt if you're trying to get away from really popular Philadelphia guys. Willie Cauley-Stein I would probably avoid. It's a difficult spot for him, and I know he's just way too cheap on DK, and he is too cheap, but this is one spot where I would leave the savings on the table and look at other things. And then finishing it up with the coup de grace, if you will, the best two teams in the NBA squaring off this evening. I don't hate Kyle Lowry at what I expect to be pretty nominal ownership. There's a lot of reasons not to like him. He's playing Golden State, which is a really good team. He's playing on a back-to-back. Kawhi is in, which moves him from 100% chance of being good to a 5% chance of being good on the season. But he has been generally good against the Warriors, and Kawhi is just going to run into better defenders the entire game, and if Lowry is feeling himself a little bit and on the bounce from last night, still just priced at a level where he's still, I think, same prices as yesterday, 76 on FanDuel, 72 on DK. I would have some exposure to him at those numbers there. I don't hate Kawhi whatsoever. I do think Kawhi plays today. Again, the reason I was pretty sure he was out yesterday was I assumed he would sit one of the games on the back-to-back, or they would have let us know by then. And they need him more for this game, and he was injured, so why not give him another day to recover? It just made sense to me. But the fact that they were so close to even thinking about playing him yesterday, or this was all up in the air, means he had to be pretty close to ready to go, and I doubt he sits out of game again against the not again, sorry, he actually played against the Warriors the first time, because that was the game he and Durant went off. That game was awesome. But I doubt he sits out of this game unless he absolutely has to, and I doubt he has to. So, like yesterday, I was basically 70-30 he sits. Today, I'd be probably 80-20 he plays if I had to give odds right now. No more side bets, please. After that, the Raptors get a little dicey for me here. Kawhi himself, I probably like Lowry a little more than Kawhi in tournaments. I like Kawhi just fine, and again, was great in Toronto against Golden State. After that, probably Serge. It's not a great Jonas spot. It's not a great spot for Pascal with all these other guys in. Probably leaving it about there. And then the Warriors, Steph is still just way the hell too cheap on FanDuel. $9,400 is too cheap for Steph. Past that, Durant obviously, when they played in Toronto, put up 70-something. That was without Steph and without Draymond, so I think the ceiling is lopped off there a little bit, but he's $200 cheaper than Curry on DK, and I think he's just fine if you want to go there. Clay's price is down, and you can certainly go there as well, but these are more like throw a guy in a tournament spots now. For playing these guys in a tournament, on DraftKings, I would probably rank them big to little, actually. I'd probably play them Draymond, Durant, Steph, then Clay, actually. Would be the order in which I'd be trying to get some exposure there. Don't completely sleep on Kevon Looney as a very reasonable, at least cash play, if not something else on DK where he's 3,700. And in tournaments, if I was going cheap, I would play Jerebko over Looney, who's looked good many games recently, including the game in Toronto where he was very, very effective. And that's it. I think I touched on everything.
Yeah, you did it. All right, let's take some questions. We got the premium Slack going, and if you are not a premium member, go hit the promo code live before lock on osmo.com to get in the mix. We are answering premium Slack questions first, and on slates like this where time's limited, we gotta go to the priority first and foremost. Protagonist asking, would you go Knox or Wes Matthews in DK cash?
In cash, I would play Wes Matthews. Almost anytime your question is guy playing the Hawks or guy on the Knicks in cash, the answer is going to be guy playing the Hawks about 98% of the time.
Another Knox question. Knox or Vonleh for FanDuel?
I'm going to play Vonleh because I think he's both safer, carries a similar upside, and the ownership is a little bit lower. But they're both guys who they're both guys who can get 50 in this game, and I'm not being ridiculous at all. Like, you can absolutely get 20 and 10 games out of either of these guys in this particular spot. Teams are thin. Matchup is great. It's going to be messy. Steals and blocks are there. So I will go with Vonleh purely because of lower ownership, but I also think he's a touch safer as far as other things too. But it's gonna be interesting.
Herter or Jeff Green for DK cash?
I'll go with Jeff Green. He's starting at the 4. That just portends some extra time there. So I will go with Herter. Or as he was referred to in Slack earlier today, Bembry, Bazemore, and the white guy. So he was the white guy.
he is hilariously white.
He is almost see-through. That's true.
Practically opaque.
Yeah.
Who are your favorite pivots for Furkan and Brunson for a DK GPP?
Okay, oddly specific. TJ McConnell lands right between them in price, and I think is certainly a place you can go. Again, if you can come up with a few $100s off Brunson, Tim Frazier is only at 4,100. Some other guys in the threes I feel I should have mentioned. I'm just going to go through here real quick. Well, scanning every guy in the threes takes quite a bit of time, as you might have expected. I don't hate playing Nerlens Noel again, by the way. That's perfectly reasonable as a tournament punt at 3,400. I don't mind playing Mitchell Robinson either in this game. That can certainly work out really well. So that's two guys at 3,400 I think are interesting. I'll stay off Blossom Game at this point with the news there. Luke Kennard is a reasonable choice. He is starting, which was the first piece of the puzzle you wanted to see. Now, he won't get as many minutes as yesterday. He's not going to get as much time because Blake Griffin is back and Stanley Johnson is back. Stanley Johnson, another guy I think is perfectly fine to roll out there in tournaments who had really been dominating that second unit. Shumpert, a perfectly reasonable pivot. Horter, the just mentioned Horter. Certainly a place you can go. So there's many pivots.
For a DK GPP, would you go Shumpert or Evan Turner?
I'd go with Evan Turner. I understand that the matchup isn't particularly ideal, but Harkless is out for rest. That does tend to give Turner a few more minutes. It bumps him up to 29, 30, and it's just 30 minutes at 4,000. Guy who can get steals and blocks. Guy who can get basically every statistical category. Evan does a little bit of everything for you, so not a great spot. Would rather play Kyle Anderson at 4,200. Another pivot to those other cheap guys we were talking about. But Evan Turner in play, certainly in tournaments for me, there's just better plays. Wilson Chandler, another pivot. I did not mention that last time around. That seems, worth mentioning.
Would you play Bagley tonight after a couple down games?
Absolutely. I like him more after a couple down games. Look, the guy actually shot really well in those down games. There was just a odd absence of a few minutes less than I expected, and just a lack of peripherals. Again, that one game where I was really high on him and he was 4,700 or whatever, playing Cleveland, I think. Played 25 minutes, which was a few less than he had been playing, and shot like 7 of 9 from the field and ended up with 18, 1, 1, 1, and 1. It's really hard to play that much time and get that few rebounds if you're Marvin Bagley. So, he's in a very good spot again. So, yeah, I'd absolutely go back to Bagley. He's doing that whole rookie, frenetic thing, but certainly the upside is there. So, I have no issue with him in a tournament.
Would you go Draymond or Cancer for DK GPP?
I'd go Draymond. I'm a giant Enes Kanter fan. I just like some of the other Knicks a little bit more, and I like some of the other centers a little bit more, so I'm just sort of disinclined towards Draymond. There's lots of other centers. Or, I'm sorry, disinclined towards Kanter. There's lots of other centers I'd like to take a shot at. And Draymond, when the number starts with 6, is always going to be a pretty exciting tournament play.
Doncic and Green or Smart and Barnes on FanDuel Cash?
Which Green?
Probably Jeff would be my presumption.
Yeah, Doncic and Green or Smart and Barnes. The positions line up in cash.
Yep.
That's really close. I will go with Doncic and Green. Smart being the least.
Randall, Korkmaz, and DeAndre Jordan, or Chandler, Grant, and Cat for DK?
Chandler, Grant, and Cat.
Green or Cancer we got. Kennard or Dotson for FanDuel Cash?
Cash, I have to take Kennard. Tournaments, I probably at that point play Dotson. You still have no Trier, no Burke, obviously. Now you have Knox moving into the starting lineup. You're looking at a possibility of Dotson having one of his big games. He's shown that you can randomly get 30 minutes out of him, might get 16 minutes out of him, and that you can get 35, 40 fantasy points out of him. So Kennard probably a touch safer. Again, Knicks, Cash, generally not words that add up frequently. So Kennard and Cash, but Dotson and tournaments amongst those guys.
TJ McConnell and Kyle Anderson, or Wes Matthews and Korkmaz, or a different cheap guy for a DK single entry?
The first one.
Gobert or DeAndre Jordan for DK GPP?
That's really interesting. It would depend where we have those guys' ownership projections. My guess is I'm going to say DeAndre Jordan, even though it's priced better on FanDuel. I do think there is a massive there's a 26 rebound spot here for DeAndre Jordan. Right now we have DeAndre Jordan at about half the ownership of Gobert. So, yeah, I will take DeAndre there.
Oubre and white guy, better known as Kevin Huerter, or Tim Frazier and Kyle Anderson for DK Cash?
The latter two. I'll go with the 41 and the 42. Give me Frazier and Kyle Anderson.
If playing one lineup on FanDuel, which Sixer would you prioritize, if any?
One lineup, FanDuel Sixer. Probably Embiid. No issue. I would not overly prioritize any of them. I don't think you need any Sixer in your lineup on FanDuel. On DK, they're all priced a little bit better. It makes a bit more sense to sort of windmill them in there and make sure you have a couple of those guys in the super cheap. But the value is not as value-y, and there's only one center spot. So I will say Embiid. If I played 150 lineups, the one I would be most exposed to would be Embiid.
Brunson or Frazier for FanDuel cash?
Brunson.
Bagley or Tice for a DK single entry?
Bagley. I'm not sure Tice plays.
Yeah, I think he's probably not going to get enough minutes now with Baines back in the lineup.
He will see the court, but I think you may just get, like, Baines will play 18. They're going to spend some time with Keefe down at the 5. We're locked, by the way, but I'm not sure he gets, like, people asked me about Bob Williams before. I'm pretty sure he doesn't play. I mean, the game could blow out. It's the Celtics against the Wizards, so the Celtics could crush the Wiz. I would go the other way there. Like, Tice, that whole thing worked out, but he had massive ceiling game and got his 30 whatever the hell minutes, and neither of those things are very likely to happen again.
Oh, there we go. Some news coming through. Channing Frye starting over Larry Nance. So there we go. Good fun for us Chalk Nance supporters.
Wow.
That's still fine. I mean, it would have been nice if they came out with that an hour ago, so then ownership would have come down, but I think I'm still fine with that.
659.
Yeah.
Wow.
I do feel like there's been, I don't know how, it doesn't make sense like gambling does, but I feel like there's been some information withheld till bad times that kind of just affect things in a way, which seems less than wholesome.
Wow. Like, I said that, and I was kidding. Like, the first guy I talked about it, well, let me talk about some of the chart. Larry Nance, I think, should be good, although they will do everything possible to fuck with his minutes for whatever reason. Like, you're still not dead, but, boy. The question is, I'm trying to figure out, has that game started yet? That's an 8 p.m. game.
Oh, is it? Okay. I didn't realize.
Okay, I will just look.
I feel like it's early. I have it on the top of my slate, but I don't have the hold on.
That's probably a 7 p.m. game then. Again, all my stuff got closed when I could not.
Yeah, it's a 7 o'clock.
It's a 7 o'clock game. It started. Okay, well then I will avoid the conversation of should you move somewhere else. That's hilarious. Now you're still far from dead. Given their poor chemistry, in my opinion, getting him away from Sexton is better. But that's amazing to me that they'll do. Like, I don't understand. There has to be something. He must have, I don't know, goosed Larry Brown in the shower or something. Like, there's something really peculiar going on there.
I think he'll still get his minutes. I'm not worried. He played the entire second half when Thompson went out last time, or like basically every minute after Thompson got hurt. So I think he'll get there. It's not, I wouldn't wait. It would be nice if he were in the starting lineup just for the confidence that brings, but I don't think it's.
Yeah, like I want him starting. This is not good news in my opinion. Chalkiest player on DraftKings, by the way. I loaded it up.
Ooh.
Furkan got up to number 3. Larry Nance, 39 even. In the, whatever the hell am I looking at here, $450,000, something or other. Largest tournament that this guy's entered into. Second place, 36% Joel Embiid. Yeah.
Wow. So not Randall, huh? Interesting.
Well, no, Randall hasn't tipped.
My bad. I forgot that was a later start.
We're not to that game yet. Yeah. 39% Randall, 36% Embiid, 28% Korkmaz. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of good value. I'd have found a way to go somewhere else. Again, he's a fine play. Don't feel bad if you have him. But if I'm building a lineup, I don't have Furkan in it. Knox, 20%. I feel a little better about that. Simmons, 15.5. Daddy likes. TJ McConnell, 13.7. Okay, that's significant. Daddy still likes, but that's more. Chetty Osman, 13.6. Certainly playing down at the 4 plenty here. Andre Drummond, 13.24. Daddy likes. Kyrie Irving, 11. Daddy likes. Luke Kennard, 10. Fine. Wilson Chandler, 10. Okay, good on you. 9.4 for Colin Sexton. Marcus Morris, only 9.3. Daddy likes that a lot. Jeff Green 7.8, Redick 7.5, Oubre 6.7, Daddy like, Tim Hardaway Jr. 6.2, Daddy like. That's I mean, it's still objectively a good matchup, and 6%, certainly one of the spots you could get your 50 out of Tim Hardaway Jr. there. Burks 6, Canner 5.5, sounds good. Kemba Walker 5.5, Daddy like. So again, that's almost exactly half the ownership of Kyrie Irving. So at that point, I probably slightly prefer Kemba in tournaments, but. Middleton 4.3, Daddy likes that a lot. Tice 4.4, again, Daddy doesn't like. I think his minutes I'd project somewhere in the 14-16 range. Marcus Smart 4.6, Daddy likes a lot. I project his minutes in the 35 range now. D'Angelo Russell 4.23, Daddy loves. Kemba, Giannis 3.7. All right, Daddy likes that a lot. Jaren Blossom game, all right, Daddy doesn't like that at all. Now you have Channing Frye starting and David Nwaba is back, and he's only 3,400, but even for like $3,400 bigs, I have him behind Noel. I have him behind Mitchell Robinson. I have him so. Daddy doesn't like the Blossom game. Blake Griffin 2.5%. All right, Daddy loves that. He can obviously do some real damage in the spot. Jason Tatum 2.5%. Yeah, I love that. Like, he was not good last game, but they're still missing 2.5 bigs. Sounds like a bad sitcom.
A lot of people panicking about the Nance thing in the YouTube chat and in the premium Slack too. I don't feel like it's time to panic, especially once, Cantor's going to put up like 8 points and 8 boards in that first run of minutes versus Fry. And I think they'll quickly go to Nance. I think that's
the really funny thing is like, what they're oh yeah, Channing Frye is going to get down there and like Channing Frye is just a remarkably anemic rebounder. So running him out there against Cantor is preposterous. The Knicks starting who we expected.
No panic, people. Everybody take deep breaths. Deep breaths.
I'd panic. No, feel free to panic. Like you're not dead. Like it can work out fine. But I would just have moved his minutes projection from 35 to 27. So they just ripped away a quarter of your fantasy points. So it's not good. I
have 60% Nance today, and I'm not panicking.
Yeah,
so
I don't panic about anything that's DFS related, but it's annoying news. But just look at it this way: it's probably a quarter of his time. It's one quarter as bad as if just Otto Porter or Jimmy Butler or whoever the hell gets scratched, killed. Giannis' neck is stiff. All that shit just happened. So yeah, take it easy. And he costs $5,900, not as much as all those guys I just mentioned in the last 48 hours. So. I agree. Some caution is called for there.
Yeah, not the most ideal, but I just look, it's DFS. A lot of weird things happen. I don't think I wouldn't sweat it too much right now, guys. For everybody panicking who feels like they just sunk lineups, it's not that deep. Guys.
No, probably not that bad. There's reason for optimism, and you can certainly look at a decent chance of again better production off the bench, less time on the court next to Sexton. I think is actually a good thing for him. So. All that makes some amount of sense. Hold on, I'll find you played yourself. I'm sure there's one. 0.35% Victor Oladipo. Nice. That's fun. I'm sure there's one. There he is. Mike Muscala. 0.25%. That's like 50 lineups. Congratulations, you played yourself.
Good for the Muskie supporters out there. He's sick or not, we want to root for him to get better.
Yeah.
Don't want to play him, but I appreciate their extra support for a great stretch 5 who does nothing besides that.
I think we got there and covered everything. I can't explain to you how frustrating that was. So I get here and I had moved some things around. And did anyone make a comment on the audio today, by the way? The entire reason that happened is I basically reset everything so that there's no reason our audio. Did anyone comment on an echo or anything?
Nope. I think you sound pristine to everybody, so we're good.
Okay, so at least it was for a good reason, because you're in my last 2 shows. Apparently, we were tin canning it pretty hard, and so that was the reason.
You were solo over the weekend, and you were doing it, and I felt pretty good about that. I saw it, and I was like, "You motherfucker!" I knew it the whole time because I have the same setup for everybody. So if it happened for you, it would happen for everyone.
Fair enough.
But it did make me feel a little. We got to take the little victories where we can get it.
Yeah, it sounds right.
All right, anything else you want to hit on? We got people panicking about Blossom game. You shouldn't have played that much Blossom game if you went heavy on Blossom game. I like Blossom game, and I didn't pay that much. I think he's got a great name. I think his game's really going to blossom.
Yeah, Jaren Blossom game is a pretty good. He's fine. Jordan Boston was not a. Again, I would have rather played Noel or Mitchell Robinson. At this point, I think he's like, I don't think he gets 28 minutes again. If Nwaba comes back, where did you expect all these big minutes to come from? But we'll see. It wasn't crazy. The guy cost almost nothing. But
yeah. No, I wish he'd become a chalk play, and that somehow had the trickle down that affected that. I would feel bad about
I'm excited about 9% owned Marcus Morris against Washington. He's been very good against Washington. Wings have been good against Washington. Everyone's been good against Washington. They can't rebound for shit. Still no Hayward. Still no. I mean, at his price in the 5s, the fact he's under 10% on DK feels pretty good to me. I project him pretty ambitiously today. So, which is weird because he was very good last game, and you expected that to swell the shit out of his ownership, and somehow he was immune to that. Like, he's owned less than Luke Kennard, whereas there's every single indicator and a good last game for Marcus Morris that he'd be good again, and Luke Kennard has just the good last game. So
yeah, I agree with that. I played a lot of Kennard that night because I thought once Blake was out, like that's just how the offense is going to flow. You're going to have Drummond in the box, and he's going to be trying to post up, and he's going to swing it out to somebody, and Kennard was the only guy who could shoot. So, and Reggie was going to get a ton more usage.
I liked, on the Kennard day, I liked Langston Galloway, who was amazing the day before. You basically had those games back-to-back where you had Langston Galloway on Sunday had 40 fantasy points, and Luke Kennard on Monday had 40 fantasy points. I wouldn't be shocked to see either of those today. I wouldn't be shocked to see either, to see neither. And before that, Stan Johnson had put up, I think, something like 240s out of the last 7, where off the bench he had completely gone nuts. So those are all the most tournament of tournament-y plays, because in many of those other games they've been bad. But with guys getting healthy and back into the rotation, that'll be a tougher spot to nail. But for a while there, when we had no Reggie, no Stan, no Ish, something had to go.
Also, people in the premium Slack saying the audio is fixed and sounds great. So we're killing it now on the audio front. We got to get better on the getting on the video on time part, but we'll do that next time. There was some tech issues which unfortunately had to be dealt with. But
yeah, the Cavs will start Sexton, Burks, Hood, Osman, and Channing Frye. I guess I will give them this: they will pull Cantor away from the basket more, which helps Chetty and stops him from getting 39 rebounds. Otherwise, he really could. So if you spot Channing Frye all the way out of the 3-point line the whole goddamn time, you have a better chance of grabbing offensive rebounds. You know what else helps you get offensive rebounds? Having players who can rebound. But, Are you there? It's quiet. Chris? Uh-oh.
I don't know what happened in there, but we can close out.
What happened, brother?
My internet crapped out for a second. The second tech issues, and then I think I lost it for a second.
Oh, you're not even like, I'm now looking at, you're like mispositioned. I'm dragging you around on the screen.
Well, are we still on the air, or are we done?
Oh yeah, no, I certainly didn't stop streaming, so I don't think your internet crapping out kills the show. So I'm glad. No, that's I'd like everyone, whoever suggested that the touts were sharing notes and intentionally providing disinformation for the purpose of moving the public one way so that we could play the other way to witness this fiasco. We can't get the goddamn software to work. You really think we have this syndicate of Sorry. I'm just saying, I'm flattered, but
yeah, no, definitely not. Everything we talk about here, we play, and obviously Eddie's not playing as much every day because he's got a job which conflicts with that. But Josh and I, when we talk about people, they are people we played. I played way too freaking much of who was it? Oh, of Troy Daniels yesterday, and he just missed some threes and then got hurt. The worst possible Troy Daniels
I already hit
situation.
Troy Daniels day. Again, in my I've done 25 shows with Josh Engelman, and in the history of those shows, one time have I said, take this guy and put him in your lineup, which he had not done. That guy was Troy Daniels, and it was in his highest placing lineup of the day. He's like, I will put in one share for you. And he got there with his 19 on the worst. That was the worst slate ever day. That was the Suns losing by 22 is the closest to the 3 games. It was that day.
Oh yeah, that was not a fun slate. Well, whatever. I had a good day Monday. I got a lot of Kennard and a lot of pivoting to Miles Plumlee away from Trey Lyles that helped me. But then I ended up not finishing at the top because of after getting slacked by people who were like, yeah, like, oh, look at you, number one. Middleton just didn't get there enough to hold off the Bam Adebayo.
He was the one who missed. Bledsoe was good. Ersan was good. Middleton and Brolo did not. Brolo wasn't terrible just because he's so damn cheap. But yeah, Middleton was disappointing, and they blew them out, and yeah, that happened. I wish I had a show yesterday because I helped a couple people off the air, and they did very well. Because usually my instructions started with pretty sure Kawhi won't play, so I would put 100% Lowry and 100% Ibaka, and that worked out okay. And the one piece of advice I gave in the Slack was I liked $1,000 Milos Teodosic in the showdown. That worked out because he gave you 14 for $1,000, so that was cool. But
yeah, he's a weird guy. When he plays well, but he just wants to go back to Europe and get fat and smoke cigarettes.
He's fun to watch. Yeah, you don't have to go to Europe to do that.
Here we go. Any homeless shelters you recommend for those of us who played a lot of Nance from our guy McCod? I have no fear. Larry Nance, here's a Spags guarantee for you. Larry Nance gets you 30 points today. I don't care how many minutes he gets. He's getting you 30 fantasy points.
Okay.
So you'll be fine. That's a Spags guarantee. Put a stamp on it. Boom. Spags guarantee.
Spaguentude.
Doesn't flow off the tongue, but we try. All right. Well, we're good now. We hit everything.
All right. Well, back again tomorrow. We'll do better.
Yeah, tomorrow it'll be Eddie and Josh. I'll be on DK Live. I'll be doing lots of DK stuff tomorrow because apparently half of our job of our Live Before Lock team is taking a day off from this and then doing DK Live. But I'll be on there doing NBA tomorrow, and I'll also be on their NFL show over the weekend on TV. So I'm big time. You're blowing up in front of your eyes, Eddie.
All right.
They're like, who's that guy who listens to Eddie so well? You need to give him more roles.
Who's that guy who looked at Eddie for a half hour while he rambled incoherently? That guy's got a future.
You missed today. I was practicing my reactions to different things because people in the Slack were like just shit talking.
I can't imagine having to do your job when so we burned 10 minutes unfortunately, and then I just talked for a half hour. But I'd be like, all right, shadow puppets. Look, it's a dog. Like I'd be doing just all the most random. I don't know how you sit there and just look at the screen for a half hour. That's
I tried different poses. I crossed my arms and listened skeptically. I stroked my beard as though to really ponder what you said. I think I gave the people a good showing if they were just watching my half.
Yeah, I would like imitate famous pieces of art. Like I would do Rodin the Thinker for a while, and then I'd do Munch's The Scream, and then after that, like I would just go through a full, an eclectic celebration of dance, but you keep it all inside.
There we go. Oh, make sure to like this video and leave a comment on the static version when it's done. That's how you'll enter our 24 days giveaway. That is still going on every day. We're giving away a month pass to any sport at Osmo.com or any item from our new merch store at shop.osmo.com. So just leave a comment talking about the Spags guarantee on Larry Nance, whatever. It's just positive things about the Spags guarantee, which is a new feature of this thing, which I'll break out time to time. But leave a comment, like the video. You'll be entered to win, and you'll also be entered to win our grand prize on Christmas Eve, which is an all-access pass for 1 year. That's every sport we have at Osmo.com. You get for free all the premium content, all the rankings and ownership projections. So it's a good way to beat up on people in other sports that aren't played quite as much. NHL has been a profitable spot for a lot of people this year, which doesn't get as much love as it should. But it's been good for people. So like this video, leave a comment about the quality of the Spags guarantee on Larry Nance. You'll be entered to win. So there we go. That's it for us today, guys. Thank you guys for watching. It'll be Eddie and Josh tomorrow, and I'll be back with Eddie on Friday. So lots of NBA coming up. We appreciate each and every one of you, and good luck tonight.